Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to be here with our partners Cube19, but also our extra special guests, Toby Babb, CEO of Harrington Star, and Mary Joy, Head of Business Systems at Venquis. So I'm going to hand over to Joe McGuire, Global Sales Director of Cube19.
Thanks, Sam. And thanks, Toby and Mary, for joining us today. We appreciate your time. I just wanted to start off, I think, by just giving a bit of an introduction to Cube19, first of all, so you know who we are, and talk a bit about, adoption, how to gain adoption, and the steps that we believe will lead to great adoption. So to introduce Cube, first of all, we are a growth analytics platform for the recruitment industry. We've been going for 7.5 years now. We've got 46 staff in the business with offices in the UK, US, and Australia. About 8,000 recruiters now using the platform globally. And what we're doing is we're delivering actionable insights to recruiters and recruiting managers. And the idea is that those insights tell them really what their next step should be to make more placements, for them to understand what actions or what good looks like and what action should be taken for us to be as efficient and successful as possible in our process. Customers that are using Cube are typically seeing on average a 32% increase in GP per head, and a significant increase in adoption of Bullhorn as well, amongst other things. So to give a bit more context around what we do, think a bit about today. So each of you, how many times have you looked at your phone to answer a question today? Whether that was looking at your diary or the weather to work out what you were going to wear, or what your trains are looking like, were they running on time, or what the traffic was like. And we're doing this all the time in our personal lives. We're using real-time information to help decide what our next step should be. How can we work through life as efficiently as possible? But then when we walk into our offices, typically what's happening is we're looking at outdated information. Because information is often collated manually into spreadsheets or whiteboards, we're often looking back at the past, so last week, last month, last quarter. And we're trying to make decisions on what's happened in the past rather than what's currently happening or what's about to happen in the future. So we really want to bring things to life. We want to help get our business life back on track technically with our personal lives. And often the data and information we're looking at is incomplete as well. So our view is that recruitment business has 4 key assets. First of all, your consultants. Those consultants are servicing clients. We're trying to fill jobs for those clients and ultimately put candidates into those jobs. Now, all of the activities and actions that connect those things together, whether they're calls or meetings or jobs or CVs, interviews, placements, etc., is data we're storing or should be storing within Bullhorn, and it creates the data and information that we should be able to forge some insights from. Now, for instance, when we're talking about clients, it's, consultants, I think, is quite straightforward. Most people spend most of their time looking at consultant activity. Whether you call it KPIs or something different, it's about how well are they performing against the benchmarks we've set for them, and are they on track? But because as humans, we're quite inquisitive when it comes to life, when we look at data or we get an answer to a question, we often challenge it. So another question gets asked and we have to answer that, and so on through the chain. Now, most people get caught up on just reporting over consultants because it's a never-ending cycle of questions we're asking. And if we're creating this information manually, it's very time-consuming. But there's a big piece of the puzzle that's being missed out here if we're doing that. We should be able to look at our clients and understand which clients we're working with. Should we be working with them? How much energy and effort are we putting into them versus the return that comes from that? How much coverage are we getting on our jobs? Is it the right amount of coverage? Could we do more, or should we be doing perhaps less on the jobs we're working? And with candidates, there's a whole bunch of things we could look at as well. But in my opinion, one of the, aside from poor CRM adoption, one of the other biggest crimes or issues we have in the industry is that contractor redeployment is extremely low. We see that somewhere between 60 and 70% of contractors ending their assignment don't get redeployed into new jobs. And more worryingly than that, about half of those people were never even contacted about new jobs in the first place. So we're just letting money walk out the door. So there's lots of insights that can be delivered once we start to collect good data. The redeployment piece is a whole different topic, so I'll leave that one for now. But really, when we're looking at adoption of Bullhorn, of our CRM, part of the problem is that we've got into bad habits. Historically, going back years, we didn't used to use CRMs that well, if at all. And as the technology has evolved, and we've got, Bullhorn's a fantastic platform that has incredible functionality to help us do our jobs more efficiently and do it better and make more placements. But we're in bad habits and we're not using the capability or the full level of value that Bullhorn can deliver. That's a problem. It's almost an acceptable joke. Every meeting I go to, one of the first questions I ask is, how well do you use Bullhorn on a scale of 1 to 10? And it's at varying levels. Some people are better than others. But often you'll get a response that it's somewhere around 5, 6, or 7 out of 10, and they'll laugh about it. And it might be a nervous laugh. Perhaps, they want to be doing more. But it's almost accepted that people won't use it because as an industry, it's culturally acceptable, which leads on to sort of us talking about the value you can get from good data, but also how to fix the data quality problem along the way. And actually, the main thing we have to do is change that culture. It's got to be a mindset change, and that cultural change has to be driven from the top. If the C-level in the business aren't driving better adoption and encouraging better adoption and making it not acceptable to not adopt, then you're never going to solve the problem. You might as well give up now, but it's only one of the pieces of the puzzle. We'll cover the rest in a minute. First of all, I wanted to talk a bit about the value of good data. So disruptive agencies are using real-time data to transform the customer experience. Now, customer experience is one of the key things that helps agencies justify their fees. It's a key differentiator, and some people get it really right and others get it really wrong. But data can really help us improve that customer and candidate experience the whole way through. eConsultancy's digital marketing trend survey found that 86% of buyers are willing to pay more for a great customer experience. That's a really interesting stat because we often just bounce around and use our gut to work out what clients to service and how to service them rather than utilizing data. And in a world where fees are often being driven down and have been for a while, it's really key that we get this part right. To give you an example of where this can be used really well, one of our customers, Precision Sourcing, they were able to win one of their biggest customers on an exclusive basis by using data and presenting that data back to the customer. So a couple of the key things they were looking at is what successful placements look like to that business. So how much coverage do they need to get? How many candidates do they need to get to interview for a successful placement? And also they were looking at where they weren't successful and the reasons behind that. And some of those reasons, or one of the reasons in particular, was related back to feedback from the hiring managers, how quickly they were getting that feedback. And if it wasn't coming quick enough, they were often losing candidates because, again, we're in a candidate-driven market right now. They're in high demand. So by knowing this information, first of all, being able to go to the customer and present this information back to them, filled that customer with confidence in the sense that they know what they're talking about, they know what's good and bad, but also they know what steps need to be taken to improve the customer experience and candidate experience throughout. And that's why they were, confident enough to get rid of all the other agencies they were working with and start working with them on an exclusive basis. Now, value. Value is really important when encouraging better usage of Bullhorn, because I think, recruiters, we're asking recruiters or salespeople, as they could be seen, to do admin. That's the way adoption or input of data into the CRM has always been viewed, as admin for people to create. But there's absolute significant value to consultants in inputting this data to the database, and it's about how we bring it to life and what insights we can start to show the consultants. So just telling people to do more of something is never going to be great. It's the way KPIs have always been used in the industry, and for the most part in the wrong way. They've been used as a stick and just to hit certain numbers that don't have any context around them. So what we're able to do with these actionable insights we've created is actually guide the recruiter more on what actions they should be taking for the greatest chance of success. So for instance, we've always, by benchmarking historical data, looking at conversion rates, looking at how much coverage we should get on our perm jobs versus our contract jobs, by understanding what contractors are coming to an end and which ones we haven't tried to redeploy. If we can present this data in a simple, intuitive way back to the consultants, we can demonstrate to them their fastest route to cash. By taking these specific actions on these specific jobs or these specific candidates, you will make more placements, and we can demonstrate that over time. Now they have an instant reason, a a definite reason to start putting information into Bullhorn, because the more it goes in, the more accurate it becomes, the better insights we get, the more placements we make. And ultimately relating this all the way back down to commission for consultants. That's really the primary thing they care about. Now, the next step in the process, so once we've fixed the culture and we've given value or a good reason for consultants to be doing this or creating these activities and actions within the CRM, the next step is to be able to track where process isn't being followed. So we've got actionable data quality insights that will start to pinpoint exactly what isn't happening. So it may be the fact that people just aren't using the system, their numbers are very low. That will be very apparent. But more importantly, when people are using Bullhorn, they often make mistakes. There's user error. We have to always expect user error if there's user interaction in something. So if a consultant is regularly forgetting to put the fee percentage in on a placement record, or they're not associating a candidate to an interview, we're missing parts of the process. So we can very clearly highlight where those gaps are. And rather than doing what we've always done and give generic CRM training to people that sometimes hits the spot and sometimes doesn't, and sometimes people listen and sometimes they don't, what about if we could give micro training to individual consultants? Pick the 3 people that don't put the fee percentage in on the placement records, show them where they should be doing it and why it's important, and then let them track if they're doing it or not. Let their managers track it. Spread that burden of responsibility that often sits with very few people in the company. Make everyone accountable for their own actions. And I think the next step in it is to start to make it a bit more fun as well. Start to gamify CRM adoption, Bullhorn adoption, by creating healthy competition, by celebrating deals, by celebrating success. Keeping it front of mind as well. By having information cycling on TVs around the office, it makes people remember that they have to do it. They want to be better than or for the most part, they want to be better than their peers. So keeping everything front of mind and visible is really important. And, messaging is important as well. So making sure, as cheesy as it might be, just keeping it front of mind and making sure that culturally as a business, it's not acceptable to not be using the system anymore. If it's not in Bullhorn, or if you're using Cube 19, if it's not in Cube 19, it doesn't exist. And that's a really big point. So to briefly summarise that, and I could waffle on all day about it, but I'd like to hand over to sort of a few questions to Toby and Mary in a moment. But in summary, key things for driving great adoption, which lead to the value in the actionable insights and the data that can be taken from that, is make Bullhorn adoption cultural. Drive it from the top. If you're not prepared to do that, you might as well give up now. Show the consultants where the value is to them. Relate it back to what really matters to them, which is probably recognition to their peers, but also commission that's going to be going into their pocket. Show them how we can help them make more money if we've got better data within the system. And track where the process isn't being followed. You've got to help people out here. You can't get it right every time. Understand what parts of the system individuals need training on, and train them on it and hold them accountable for it when they're doing that. And make it fun. Gamify the adoption. And you'll start to see that actually people will start to self-police. Their peers will start to remind them they haven't done something or they're behind them on the leaderboard. And if they've arranged the interviews, just haven't added them to Bullhorn, they'll almost certainly start to do it when their peers are on their case about it. And just remember of how much value comes to the individuals in the business, but ultimately the business itself, when we can get everybody working as efficiently as possible by understanding what is good, what is bad, where we waste time, where we should invest more time, and we can start to tweak and hone to get these marginal gains across the business. Like I said, I don't want to waffle on too much. I'd like to sort of involve Mary and Toby a bit in the conversation now, and start to really understand from their perspective how they can use, or how they've first of all created better adoption, but also what the outcome of that has been. So Toby, thank you for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
You seem to get ruled out to a lot of these things. So Toby's been a customer of Cube for nearly 7 years now. We're actually our third customer.
Sure, a second.
Well, we'll check that one out. We'll look at the data. But it'd be good to understand. So I remember when I first came to your office all those years ago, and we started talking about data and the value of data. And I know you've got a lot of sort of valuable insights into the information you had, but you were able to answer pretty much any question I threw at you. You had spreadsheet on spreadsheet on spreadsheet that were manually collated, but I was really impressed by how much information you actually had access to. So already having that information, why did you initially invest in Cube?
So already having that information is one thing, but actually the time that you were taking to do that at that sort of stage was moving from the manageable to the unmanageable. And at that sort of stage, we grew as a business. So when we first started up, I knew that data, for all the reasons you've just spoken about, was essential to us being able to grow a business. It wasn't always about just having a couple of people in a room. It was about scaling something big. And if you want to be the best in the world at what you do, I think you have to have the best technology behind that, the best data behind that, the best people behind it, and it all comes together. And so when we were looking at that sort of time, we were saying, right, okay, what do the best sports teams in the world do to find the best data, and what systems have they got into it? It became pretty clear that what we were doing wasn't sustainable moving further forward. So we looked at a couple of systems. I think we tried one alongside you at that sort of stage. And it became really clear very, very quickly to us that this was something that could give us all the information we needed a lot quicker, a lot easier, a lot more visibly, and a lot more open to every individual within that, saving time and giving us the opportunity to improve everyone in the business.
Okay, great. So you've expanded the business a lot since you started working with us. I think you have somewhere around 15 consultants.
Possibly,
when you first started using Cube, and you're now over 60 consultants, and you've actually over the last couple of years been expanded into the US.
Yeah.
So what impact has having real-time data meant to you as a CEO of a multinational business and going through that expansion?
Yes, look, as things grow, things get more complex, all the time, and you're looking at business effectively you're physically at 4 times a year. So there is an enormous amount of being able to, I want to add value to that particular business out in the States. And my way of doing that is to be able to look at that and know exactly where they are without actually physically being in there. So I know when they're going to be good, and I say not being good, but going to be good, based off the data which they're doing in the weeks coming up to where they're going to be successful. And I also know when they've got problems coming because of what they haven't done over the weeks that precede that at the same sort of stage. So for me, and a value that I can add to an international office is you can almost, through data, you can see the future effectively. So if I look at this month, I think I'm currently £2,000 out on the prediction that I put out over a fairly significant variable, like hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of variable, over the course of a thing I wrote in my pad to myself. On day one of the month, I'm £2,000 out at the moment as to where we would end the month up on. And that's because we've been able to move something physically within the business and know that what we do has an effect. So what we've done in the past absolutely bears out the future. And over the last 2 weeks, it's been, the numbers have moved up in activity, and I know the numbers are going to shift in result off the back of that, and I know exactly where we're going to be. Now, to have that sort of ability to forecast and to grow and see where we want to go and whether to make decisions on staffing or growth or international business or whatever it might be, if I haven't got that sort of data to hand, I'm putting my finger in the air and I'm jeopardizing careers effectively, because I'm making bad decisions that will have an impact on someone further down the line. But if I know what's coming, 1, 2, 3 months down the line, based off what we're doing today, I'm in a much better position to be able to say this is what we need to do and where we need to go off the back of it.
To be £2,000 out on your projections is pretty impressive. I'm sure there's probably a lot of people on the line right now that are going to be trying to find your phone number after to work out how you did it. So how is having data and ultimately Cube 19, how is it helping drive, or how has it also helped drive better adoption and usage of Bullhorn across the business?
So to caveat that slightly, I don't think we've ever had as a business a massive issue with adoption of Bullhorn. And I say that because when we first started up, there were 4 of us in a room and we said, right, this is going to be a really important part of how we do things. And I think because we had that and then we brought people in and said, this is how it is, it sort of became something that was an important part of the business, full stop. So I think you come into some places and it's a little bit more maverick than that, and it's all startup. We knew that because we had ambitions of where we wanted to be, that was something to get right at the start. So it's never been a massive thing to say we need to culturally drive more adoption of Bullhorn and Cube. Cube, I think, has been important to it alongside that, to say people know that what we're doing is trying to improve them. So when we're talking to them about why they should be putting stuff on the system, why they should be using Bullhorn, it's not because to keep someone off their back or to fudge a figure or to get them out of trouble. It is to effectively look at things and say, this is how we can make you better. Now they recognise and have seen countless examples of people who've been, at X and have got to A off the back of it. And what we want to do is to say, look, if you want to get better at your job, we need the raw data to be able to help you do that, because we'll be able to do this, and this, but we will make significant actionable suggestions to you based off the data and what we see off that data to improve you as an individual. And when it's about improvement as opposed to sticks or beating people up to do the numbers, you haven't got a problem with, in my opinion, with data adoption, because people are doing it because they know that they want to be tracked and improve it. It's like a professional athlete in pre-season will be having data left, right, and centre coming to do. They're not trying to fudge that data. They're trying to look at how they can improve and become a better player off the back of it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same as I think what a consultant should be looking at. So how do we get better at doing those sort of things? And if you've got, if you use Cube and Bullhorn properly, you absolutely can look at every single individual in your business and make them better.
That's great. I want to come back in a minute to talk about how data is viewed in the industry and the negative connotations around it.
Yeah.
But I should like to sort of ask Mary a couple of questions first, and then I'll come back to that. Thank you. Mary, so Mary's been a customer for a little less time than Toby, but just over a year now, isn't it? And I know that when I first came to meet with you, you were very bought into data and the value of the information, given your background in systems and analytics and so on. You had as a business, had a real thirst for more information or more insights into that data. So since you put Cube 19 in, what actionable data insights are Vanquish using on a day-to-day basis to drive performance?
So I think the current reporting as a precursor to the actionable insights has been a great introduction to the ability of Cube to have that forward-looking view. And, for us, the actionable insights are a really interesting jump forward on this functionality. And the ones that we're focusing on at the moment are management of SLAs. So looking at where the process has fallen down, why has it fallen down, how could we improve it, do we need to make changes, so CVs out in a given time frame as a core example across the business. And, looking at things like driving the proactive re-engagement with our finishers, building that relationship, making sure we understand the requirements of our clients and our candidates at a time where things are very fluid, and just making sure that we're available and we have the knowledge to drive the best service forward for them. And looking at contact points, so ensuring that we have core contact points with our core candidates, our core clients, so that we are aware of what they want, what they need, and making sure that we are driving that. So looking at, and that flows into data integrity, gap analysis around what could we be doing better, what should we be doing better, what could we change. And I think for us, as we discussed, insights are a really new feature, and I think as we get more involved in the what can we do next with the Cube team, I think we'll expand more and more across our data sets to gain added value.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you talk about your internal SLAs, so the amount of coverage or amount of interviews you should be arranging at perm jobs or number of CVs sent to contract jobs in a specific time frame as well, so impacting and acting quickly. I know you already had automation of some reporting before you started working with us, but you were still doing a chunk of it manually. So why does speed of reporting matter so much in recruitment?
I think it's incredibly important to have clarity in any business reporting, and having strong visibility of both the historic information in conjunction with ongoing insights is key to be able to make the decisions that drive the business forward, especially as we continue to expand our European offering with placements in regions such as Denmark, Sweden and France as examples. And accurate data is the goal of every business, and it's an ever-changing medium in a changing industry. And so the ability to review, to analyse and revise the way that we capture and use this data is integral, and that's where the value of a strong CRM and reporting platform are fundamental, I think.
And how are you optimising sort of business performance using Bullhorn and Cube 19 alongside each other?
Yeah, so for us, Bullhorn enables us to manage the core business data and define the metrics and the KPIs that are important and that we focus on. And then Cube gives us the ability to view this data in a really meaningful and real-time way. Having an integrated tool like Cube19 means that the data, the metrics and the insights are clear and visible from the individual consultant view all the way up the business to the group managing director, and that drives adoption and accuracy, which in turn ensures better quality data and therefore gives us the meaningful insights that we can then use to steer enhanced client and candidate journeys, bringing process improvements, and the output of that is increased revenue.
Yeah, that's great, and I think the point you've made sort of a couple of times throughout those answers is that you aren't just looking at consultant activity; it's the whole picture. It's all about the clients and the jobs and the candidates as well, and I think that's a big thing. It sort of leads about you've used the term KPI, and Toby, you were mentioning about measuring the right things. I think one of the biggest issues I see in the industry is that when I walk into meetings and I talk to people about data and what they'd like to get from it, often a response I get is that the business I'm talking to is not a KPI-driven business. They're sort of saying, well, we don't really care what consultants do. We don't look at the activities. They're just looking at how much money they bill, which I think the reason behind that is because KPIs have always been used in the wrong way. They've been just a random number that someone's probably plucked out the air. It might have been the number they had 15 years ago when they started in recruitment. That's what their consultants have to do. And then they've been beaten with a stick into an inch of their life until they've hit that number. What would be your response to someone if they told you they weren't a KPI-driven business?
Yeah, so it's funny, isn't it? So I look at one of the most common things I hear from people who are interviewing with us, and it's that they're leaving because of really KPI-based culture or whatever it might be. And I don't think that's what they mean. I don't think people are saying they're leaving because of a KPI-based culture. I think they're leaving because of a culture of poor management in and around numbers as a way of getting things done. Every business, no matter whether you look at the data or not, is a KPI-driven business.
Or should be.
What it is, because whether they're looking at the numbers, behind those numbers there are CVs that need to be sent, there are interviews that need to be booked, and there's jobs that they need to pull. So whether they look at them or don't look at them, they have KPIs that will deliver those results off the back of it. To do that without looking at those numbers, in my mind, is relatively irresponsible as a business owner, because it means you've got numbers there that you have no idea about how or why they came about. Mm-hmm. There is no success leaves clues is a phrase that I love hearing about, which is showing how you get to be good when you're good and how you're not good when you're not good, and why you're not good when you're not good. And I think you should always be looking at the reasons why you're performing well and why you're not performing well. So for me, a KPI culture is an essential part of elite performance. And if you want to get yourself up to the highest level, you have to know why you've got to high levels when you've got to high levels, and why you're not performing well when you're not. And finger in the air isn't a strategy for a growth business, as far as I'm concerned. So look, the issue is people say these are the numbers you need to hit that are randomly plucked. They'll be the same for a new starter as they are for a superstar performer. They're the same for this market as they are for that market, the same for a contract recruiter as they are for a perm recruiter. There is no science to it whatsoever. This is how we've always done it, so this is what you need to get hit. People don't think they can hit it. They don't buy into those numbers. There's no explanation about why that's going to make them successful or not make them successful or doing what they're doing. It's always about what you can do more of, as opposed to how you can tailor and look at the averages and the ratios. And you've got to look at every single individual as an individual and work out what they have to do to add 32% to their performance, or whatever it might be off the back of it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, and we've actually seen a number of examples where when people have gone live with Cube and they've been able to look into the data, they've actually reduced the target levels of activity for some consultants because they've worked out how to make them more efficient. Yeah. You don't always have to do more to be more successful. Yeah. It's about doing more the right thing. Yeah.
There are people there who do the right thing, and there's people there who do the wrong thing, and it comes down to me as quality, quantity, or direction. If anyone who's got an issue, it's going to come down to one of those three things. They're either not doing enough, they're either doing enough but it's of poor quality, or they're doing it with the wrong jobs. And if you work Cube and Bullhorn together properly, you have the answer to every single one of them just by looking at the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Mary, what's your sort of take on that? If I told you I wasn't a KPI-driven recruitment agency?
I think everyone's got KPIs, recruitment specifically, but across the board. So I think there's always going to be targets that need to be met, or there has to be an activity level to drive your end goal. But I think it's about having those targets, as Toby said, being very specific, measured against who someone is, what they're working on, what sector they're building in. So it's not a one size fits all. And I think with Cube, that's one of the values of it, that you can have these very defined metrics down to the individual if you need to, and then across the business as well.
That's great. So I suppose from that, it comes back to culture again. I think is what we're saying here, is that it's how we view data and what we're using data for and the value we get from it. And I want to sort of emphasise the point here that you shouldn't just be using data to measure KPIs. We should be looking at, as Toby said, the why behind the what. Why are we asking people to do things? Where are we asking them to do it? And how much should they be doing to stand the biggest chance of success? The only thing a KPI is there to do is to make sure we're on track for doing those things, not to be a stick and tell someone they've got to make 400 calls every 4 minutes. Mm. Cool. Sam, I think, is there anything you wanted to inquire about?
Yeah, I think so. What we'll do now is perhaps we can open this up. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put those into the questions box. There have been a couple that have come up while we've been speaking. So this is an open question, but at what point should a business be considering tools to help them understand their data?
From my perspective on this is straight from day one. You have numbers that you need to do to get to where you want to be, and it depends on exactly who you are and where you want to go. Look, for me, when I was a recruiter, I was always looking for the data that I needed to do to understand what I needed to get from it. So if I had that from day one, that's what I want. That's what I wanted to have. And I think I stand by it. Whether you're 100 people, 1,000 people, or one person, you will have the same amount of data that you need to make you better. And if you're saying, right, your numbers are X and you want to get to result Y, then you have to change that to get to result Y. And that data can give you insight straight away.
So I think in my experience, it's about building your framework the right way at the beginning, so you understand your requirements, you understand the data integrity, all of the things that build that successful tool, and embedding it into the culture. Because if you start in the right way with the right tools, you can only go forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Your point, Toby, was that when you were 4 people in a room, small room, it was all really important for everyone using the CRM, because you know where you wanted to get to, and you're not trying to fix a problem later. Yeah, you've never had a problem. Yeah, and I think that's important. So Russell Clements, who was the chief exec of S3 for a number of years, he's our chairman, and his view is that macro success is micro success multiplied. So effectively, S3 wasn't a 2,500 person company. It was a company made up of 2,500 individuals that were all trying to be successful. So making each person on their desk level successful, adopting that and having that cultural piece and knowing it is what made S3 the success it is. So I think from that, if you look at it on that granular basis, from day one, the sooner the better, really, I think is my opinion on that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that fits in nicely to the next question. And we've touched upon it, but why is adoption challenging? Why do we find that, in this industry that, getting recruiters and sales staff to use technology, why is that such a challenge? Why do people perceive it to be a challenge?
Because it is, for starters. But I don't think it's a recruitment thing. I think it's a sales thing, full stop. So if you look at almost every industry, and I guess that sort of magnifies itself in the recruitment space, there are traits that make salespeople decent salespeople, and those traits are usually sales skills which are quite personality orientated. One of those skills that isn't quite so regularly put alongside those is organisation and discipline. If you look at the sort of triangle of habits that are involved in the makeup of consistent good performers, they'll have sales skills, they'll have sales motivation, but the process behind it is what makes it sustainable. And where I think you have people who are successful in sales and successful in recruitment over a sustained period, and this goes when you study any of the great salespeople of history. There's a guy called Joe Girard who was Guinness Book of Records, best salesman in the world, a car salesman out in America. His whole process was 100% based around the Rolodex systems that he had at that sort of stage. That's only now what Bullhorn and Cube does for him, but it allowed him to improve his customer service. So what I think you've got is a cultural place there where traditionally sales managers have said, there's results. Don't worry about them. Let them get on with it, and we'll we'll sweep up the mess. That mess cascades and sends a message down to everyone else, and suddenly it's a free for all because what's good for one is good for everyone, and you've suddenly got you got mayhem on your hands behind it, and you can't scale off the back of it. So we'll look at people and say, right, okay, that person there is a maverick, but that is a very dangerous way of looking at things because it will come out and spread, and all of a sudden you can't make the sort of predictions we've been talking about and able to grow your business. So I think it's a cultural thing. It is the nature of a salesperson is it isn't glamorized to be a really good systems person. It's glamorized to be a really good gift of the gab sales type individual, and the uncool part of it is your data usage, but it's in my mind it's the unglamorous stuff that allows the glamorous stuff to happen consistently.
Absolutely. And maybe one final question here then, and I think what is really cool and what does genuinely help adoption is when recruiters can actually start seeing the fruits of their labor, when they start following these good processes, and when they start actually putting in the effort to track what they're doing. That does lead to some pretty cool results, and it actually benefits what they're doing at the ground level. It's very easy to see how good data and analytics can really help execs or managers, business leaders, but at the ground level, that also has some significant impact. And I was wondering if maybe you can share or discuss that impact that perhaps your teams have seen or experienced as part of that.
Okay.
I think from a business perspective, it's really important for people to be able to see where they are, in comparison, especially when you're coming in new to the business, to be able to understand, where you are against your colleagues, against other, people in different sectors, people in your own sector, and just having that visibility and having that sort of almost healthy competition or, just engagement with other people in the business. So I know, Joe, you said that a lot of it is about making a consultant good for themselves, but I think there's a healthy competition which I think benefits across that.
Yeah, this whole thing for me is about individuals building habits that make them successful. So if you've got no visibility about what you're doing that's due to, or what you need to do to make you successful, you can be completely blissfully ignorant of why you're not doing well. Now, over your first 3 months in the industry, you can either do a month's worth of jobs and have a month's worth of opportunity, or you can have 3 months, or you can have 6 months. And the people who are going to put 6 months worth of work into a 3-month period are generally going to be accelerating at a much quicker level because they've got exposure to load more stuff over that particular period. For me, if you can't see that, or if you don't know what you're doing or how much you're doing, it's always a surprise to people when they realise that they've done as little as they have done over a period, unless you're building those habits and putting that structure in place. Because realistically, I've never seen anything other than the start of a recruitment career about people being successful on how hard they shake a tree. You shake a tree hard enough, more apples are going to fall off it. If you just lean against it, you might have one drop down every 2 months or whatever it is. So I think it's about making sure that people are there and shaking a tree as hard as they can, as quick as they possibly can do from it.
That's a great analogy. Fantastic. So that's all the questions that we've got that's come in. Certainly, if anyone else does have any questions.
There was one, sorry, Sam, I've just seen here. There's some questions in there that are sort of quite sort of granular in terms of what I think the answer needs to be. So I won't sort of take up everyone's time with that. I'll answer every other question specifically. There's one here asking about if it's possible to see your job vacancies and then also the actions and activities that happen against them, whether they're CVs, interviews, offers, etc. I think to answer that in a quick way, yes, absolutely. But I think when you're starting to think more about your data journey and where you're trying to get to, it's understanding that there's almost countless numbers of questions that are going to be asked in the business. And it's about having the flexibility to be able to answer those questions as they happen in real time on real-time data. So if you think of, just to sort of recap what we do, it's about consultants, the clients they're servicing, the jobs they're trying to fill for those clients, and the candidates they're trying to fill the jobs with. Any question about those things, we can help you answer. And I'll sort of reach out to you individually and have a bit of a chat in more detail about that.
Excellent. Sorry, yeah, there were some questions on here actually that did come in, so sorry I missed those. But I think, certainly like Joe said, we can. I think this is a really interesting topic, and there's a lot of conversations that can come out of this. So certainly, if we haven't had time to answer your question, we are going to reach out. The recording will be shared. So for anyone that wants to record in, or who may want to be able to share this to some of the other folks in their business, we'll be able to share that across. So I'm not sure, Joe, is there any last comments from yourself?
Yeah, I think just to wrap up, just to leave someone some things to ponder, but the reason we set up Cube19 7.5 years ago is because we really felt that the recruitment industry had already fallen massively behind every other industry when it came to utilising the value of data. Toby's mentioned about how sport uses information, but Netflix, casinos, Tesco club cards, everything is using data to extremes to be as successful as they possibly can be and give the best customer experience ultimately. So think about that going forward. We're in a relationships industry where we often use gut feel and our relationships to forge, success, and that's just a part of it. Put that alongside the data and information and your experience, and that's how you create most success, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you coming in and sharing some of your experiences and something from the Cube19 side. We do really appreciate that, Toby, Mary, and a really special thanks to you. Any outstanding questions we'll be following up. We'll share the video recording. If you do want any more information, do reach out to your Bullhorn account manager, the Cube19 team, and we'll be more than happy to discuss this with you and share any further experience or answer any questions you might have. Fantastic.
Right,
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone.